Hey guys, yes, it's me again for the fifth time today. You're probably tired of seeing this ugly mug, but guys, this is going to be an amazing episode. Today is the 21st of December, I think. Everybody's stressed the hell out. We got people talking about Trump, Biden. We got Christmas coming up. We got New Year's. We got people worried about if we're supposed to wear masks, if we're supposed to get a shot, not get a shot. So everybody's stressed out. Well, my friend Sarah, we're going to be talking about how to not get stressed out. And if you listen to all the way till the end, we're going to give you three things that you can start using today to totally de-stress your life. Now she does everything. Best-selling author, speaker, teacher, massage therapist. She does it all. And I get the honor and privilege to have her on my show. I'm truly grateful and honored. Sarah, welcome to the show.
Oh, Richard, thank you so much for having me. I'm so thrilled to be able to be on at this time of year. It's an especially difficult time for so many. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much. One thing before we get started, because I do have a traumatic brain injury. If I don't ask the question, I'll forget. What is your definition of resiliency?
My definition of resiliency is just the ability to bounce back, get back up. We're all having setbacks, and you never know when stress is going to strike. So being able to just get back up with a mindset that has positivity to it. We don't have to be positive all of the time, but as long as we move toward positivity, we can bounce back.
And I totally agree. And guys, if you're listening to this, if you're a CEO, CFO, if you're an entrepreneur, a lot of people don't realize there's a very high suicide rate for veterans, CEOs, CFOs, entrepreneurs. Because when we hit that top of the rung, there's nobody to talk to anymore. If we're the top of the food chain, there's nobody really to talk to anymore. So that's what we're going to talk to you guys today about how to de-stress your life. So let me ask you a question, because if everybody's seen you now, they see how successful you are, hanging out in the city, Vegas, they wouldn't realize that, your whole life wasn't unicorns, rainbows. You went through some stresses. You had some struggles in life. So tell us a little bit about where you come from, where did you grow up, and how did you become the force that you are today?
Yes, thank you so much. And you're absolutely right. It has not always been rainbows and unicorns. And I grew up in Vegas, but I'm from Hawaii. And these are two places where people go to de-stress. Hawaii has the beautiful beaches, it's so laid back. And Vegas is the party town. We call it Sin City. But here's the thing is that, we used to have this slogan that was, what happens in Vegas stays in Vegas. And although that seemed true for a long time, here's the thing. People come to Vegas, but they keep their stress and they take it back home. And that's one of the things that I realized over the years growing up here. I saw so much and I did what I was supposed to do, like many successful people. And not everybody took this path, but I took the path of going into college and getting the degree I was supposed to get, going into a field where I was supposed to climb that corporate ladder and doing it for other people and not knowing that I wasn't doing it for myself. And I was checking off all the success boxes, climbing that corporate ladder. I had a long-term relationship. I was in great health. I was doing half marathons with my dog. And I got to the point, Richard, where I was working so many hours because that's what I thought I was supposed to be doing. I was sacrificing so much of my time and my energy for everyone else. But I had no idea that that wasn't normal because everyone else around me was doing the same thing. We were all in the same, trenches of overworking and exhaustion. We were overwhelmed. And one day I walked into work and it was about 4 a.m, which is completely early for me. And we were opening up our third Starbucks locations. That tells you how big of a property I worked for. I worked for a major casino at the time. And my boss, unbeknownst to my coworker and I, he had come in early and we just sat down. I was relieving the night manager and she just needed a cup of coffee. So we sat down for this cup of coffee to have just a little reprieve for her. And if you can imagine a full cup of coffee and, just taking that little break and just the relief that she had until our boss walked in. And when he did, he started yelling at her. Well, I didn't realize that that's what was happening because I had taken an urgent phone call. And when you get a phone call from your home at 4 o'clock in the morning, you know something's happening and something not so good. And so when I walked back into that experience between my boss and my coworker, I stepped in the middle of their conversation and I had to diffuse the situation because he was yelling at her and she was yelling back. And I quit. I quit the grind, that corporate grind, because I was fed up with all of the hours. I was fed up without the recognition or even a thanks. And I had no idea what to do in my life at that point. I just felt that struggle of, wow, I felt good that I let go of that, but now what? I had no idea what to do. And, when you're in a place where you're not sure what to do, what do you, like, where do you go from there? What I didn't realize when I took a step back was every time I walked into my own office, my hair was falling out. I was having heart palpitations, which I didn't know were panic attacks. And I just, you ever get that feeling where you're out of breath? And I was having that every time I stepped into my office. And it wasn't until I was removed from that situation that I realized how terrible it was. And Richard, have you ever experienced anything where, you knew that you didn't want to be where the place you were? Yeah.
Plenty of times. Yeah.
And I know a little bit about your background too. And being in that place felt awful. So what did I do? I went into massage therapy, the least stressful place I could think of, the least stressful job and career. And so I started working on my physical stress and working on my body. And I still kind of felt like this little gaping hole, something that wasn't fulfilled for me. And so I studied nutrition, got my certification in helping not only with people's nutrition, but my own nutrition. So I went on a vegan diet, I went on supplements, and my health started, amping even further. But I still felt like there was something missing. So then, I started studying different ways to help other people. And I kept giving to more and more people, thinking it was going to help me. And it did for a little bit. But what was really missing, which I didn't realize at the time, was it didn't have the emotional resilience that we just talked about. I felt bad for myself. I felt so unappreciated and saddened many times. But out in the public, we put on this face, don't we? We put on this like, everything's great, everything's good. And that wasn't the case for me. And so it wasn't until I started reflecting inside and going, hey, what's the common denominator? It's me. I'm the one that's not happy. And I realized that in my 17-year relationship that I had, that we had grown apart. We were no longer compatible. We were no longer in that place where you grow together. So I left that relationship. So almost everything in my life changed over a few years. And, when you have that feeling of being lost and you don't know where to go, you start kind of finding things that don't work. And so going through that process, I started to go, okay, all right, like I said, what's not working? And then figure out what does work. And so when I started helping other people with their stress levels, and I started realizing that putting it all together was the key. Not only the physical part and your body, but the emotional part. It creates the actions that you do, and it's all set off by your triggers. And that's the beat method, right? There's, you have to address all of these different things together. And that's why I'm so excited that I put together these techniques into 2-minute techniques into a book. And we can go into a longer story about how that came about. And it does have to do with a friend of mine committing suicide. And she committed suicide as we were going into the holidays 3 years ago. And that devastation hit home for so many of us in our community, in the health field, in massage field. And, that's when I really put it out there and said, I really need to create a book, because I was just helping people one-on-one, and I didn't know how to help more than one person at a time. And so hence putting together this book, Stressed Out and Don't Know What to Do.
All right, so let's talk about, and we're talking exclusively to massage therapists right now. I had a friend for years. She was a massage therapist, and she would do deep tissue, Reiki, and all that good stuff. And she would do maybe 2 or 3 a day, and she would come home emotionally wiped out. And I'd be like, because I didn't understand it, I didn't put 2 and 2 together, that when you put hands on somebody, you're taking all their energy that is going into your body, and you're soaking up all this negative energy. And then you got to go home with this, and you don't have any way to release it. So, and I think a lot of people, when you see here, oh, massage therapists, people don't realize, they're soaking up all this negative energy. And if you're spending 3-4 hours a day soaking up negative energy, it's got to come out somewhere. And it's usually, I know a lot of massage therapists, as soon as they get done, they're going to the bar, they're going to the club, they're trying to get this negative energy out, doing negative things. So talk about that, about what it's like to, get on a table, have somebody on a table, you put hands on them, and you feel that electric shock, and all that negativity starts flowing through you. What's that like?
Thank you for mentioning that, because not a lot of people understand that and know that that's what happens. And, energy is transferable. So when somebody puts out negativity, as a massage therapist, we are right there to receive that. And if we don't put up our resilience, if we don't put up a safeguard, a boundary for ourselves, it does get into our bodies. It does get into, our being. And even if you're not a massage therapist, you can relate to this in the sense that, your kids come home and they're cranky, they're angry, they're hangry, whatever it is. What do? You either take that on and you yell back at the kids, or you get, a little cranky yourself. We all do it. And so it's more amplified as a massage therapist, because we're in a place where people are needing and wanting to let go of that negativity in their bodies. And we do soak it up. And for me, I do work with a 5-star spa, so I'm doing 7 massages a day sometimes, and that's a lot of negativity that can be soaked up into my own body. But I'm able to put up a guard for myself, and it's a little ritual that I do, and it's essentially, I use myself as a facilitation of healing, and not healing myself. I'm not the healer, I'm the facilitator for healing. And so when we think about it from that perspective, the energy that comes out of somebody, the negativity or the anger or the sadness, because we have trapped emotions. And, when you're dealing with PTSD, when you're dealing with, a traumatic event that's occurred in your life, whether it be, you've seen trauma in your life, or if you're, been through the military and, you've seen that happen, that trauma gets stored within your body. And if you, and there's science around it, where it gets trapped, these emotions get trapped. And I'm fortunate enough to be able to help people to have emotional breakthroughs. And that's what we do as stress experts. But if we keep those emotions in our bodies, it results in physical pain a lot of times. So when I talk to people about, oh, do you have a pain in your neck? And then I ask them, who's your pain in the neck? And usually it's attributed to something or somebody that's gone on, or somebody in particular in their lives. And so what we do is we go beneath the surface. What's that one level down? What's beneath that smile that's on somebody's face because there's really sadness behind it? So where's that sadness coming from, or that anger, or that emotional state that's causing that? What's the root of that problem or challenge for them? And usually when I talk to somebody, either they're on my massage table or I'm working with them on a Zoom call, helping them to release these trapped emotions, we go to that root of that problem and that stressor. Because when we keep it inside of ourselves, you know that once we stuff down that emotion, it starts festering and building up and building up. And that's why so many times you see people that, just blow up or go off on something in particular when it just seems like a small little thing. It's not. It's because that big thing's been building up for so long.
Yeah, and and I get it. Like I put out a post today that January 1st, I'll be celebrating 35 years of sobriety without a drug or an
Congratulations.
alcohol. But I know that I use the term halt. If I'm hungry, angry, lonely, or tired, something bad's about to happen. And I
Yeah,
think that if any of those four things happen to the average person, that's when I think they're ready to be set off. Because if you're hungry, your body's not right. If you're feeling anger, it's because it's something deep down that's bothering you. If you're feeling lonely, that's the worst feeling in the world, is to feel that you don't have anybody, that you don't have
absolutely.
nobody to talk to. And then when you're tired, your body just breaks down.
Hmm.
Even if you lose even a couple hours of sleep in a week, it can really affect your performance. So if any of those four things, you're heading for a breakdown. If you're any of those four, and a lot of people that are stressed out might have three or four of those same issues.
Absolutely.
So when somebody comes to you and they're about to get on your table, like when I was with GNC, somebody would come in and they're like, I want to lose weight, and I'd be like, all right, hold on, uh, I don't care what you're eating, I want to know what's eating you, and then we could work the rest out. But if you're stressed, if you're like me, if you're a stress eater, then I can't help you if we don't solve the problem of why you're eating so much or why you're so much of a stress eater. I always ask them, what's eating you, and then we'll figure out the rest later. So, what is it like when you're first sitting down with somebody before they get on on your table?
What it's like is, people are we have so many guards up these days, and we don't want to share too much of what's going on for ourselves because it's very vulnerable. And if you walk into a stranger's office and you go, hey, you know what, I've got all of this happening and going on in my life, it can be challenging. And so what do people do? They go on and tell you the most superficial thing that they can. Again, let's go with the pain in the neck. Hey, I've got a pain in the neck, Sarah. Okay, all right, so what's causing this pain for you? And it'll be, I've been at my computer. Um, I'm a business owner, and so I'm at the computer all day. So my posture is a little bit off. And so I'll go, okay, great. So we'll work on their shoulders, we'll work on their neck, and then so I ask more questions. And it doesn't have to be on my massage table. It can just be, like I said, on a Zoom call. We do both, but we dig deeper. And so one of the things that we talk about in stress relief is go slow and get below. And what that means is slow down. What's going on in your mind? You got all of these things rattling around. You mentioned it earlier. What is the political climate like? What's going on for the holidays? All of these things are just bouncing around in your head. So when you slow down and get into the present moment, you start to go, okay, here's what's really happening. I'm really upset about this or that. What's happening in my life is something about my relationship, my career, my health. Those are usually the factors that come up the most. Finances, right? They're struggling with something along those lines, and I call that C fresh. You're either struggling with your career, your finances, your relationships, your emotional state, your spirituality, or your health. In those six areas, those are the major areas that people get stressed out about. And so when we go slow and get below the surface and find out what's really happening, then they start to open up and talk about, okay, maybe it's a fight that you've had with your significant other. Maybe you're supposed to take out the trash, and you didn't. So do you own up to it, or do you brush it under the rug? Well, those things build up over time. And again, like I talked about, then it comes to the surface and it comes out very negative. And so when we find out what those things are, like you're talking about triggers, your halt, those are triggers. And so going back to what I was saying earlier about beat, if it's in your body, in your emotional state, or your actions, all of those stressors are set off by what? Those triggers. And you've got it. I'm sure you do that in your practice. And when we discover what our triggers are and get ahead of the game, then we can neutralize those triggers and get to resolving that stress before it comes out in a negative way. Because once we do something, once we yell at our spouse, once we, cut somebody off on the freeway, once we start yelling at somebody in the grocery store, we can't take those things back. But that's what's happening more and more in society, is you keep seeing that day in, day out. You see it all over, social media. And it's, if you don't see that on a daily basis, then you're not turning on any news.
And and if you're in a relationship, like I love my wife, I love my bride. She's my best thing that's ever happened to me. But there's certain things that trigger me, and there's certain things that trigger her. For me, I can't stand dirty dishes. I don't know what it is. I go ballistic if I see dirty dishes. She could care less, but there's certain things that'll trigger her. So, if you're in a relationship, you need to find out what your partner's love languages are,
Mm-hmm.
and try to, like, I know my wife, if I bought her a Gucci bag or diamonds or shoes, she would, for Christmas or birthday, she'd give them back to me in a bag and tell me to go return them. But if I say, me and you, we're going to go to a Broadway show and then we're going to go to Atlantic City for the weekend, that would just make her life. So I think if you're going to be in a positive relationship, you need to know your triggers and the other person's triggers, but you also need to know their love language and your love language. Because most of the time, they're total opposite than your partner. But a lot of people think, well, if this makes me happy, this is supposed to make you happy. Well, if that's the case, that means if there's two of you that are just alike, one of you is not needed.
Exactly.
So talk about that, with triggers and, with your partners.
Yes, absolutely. And that is the thing. Sometimes we come from our own space of what we want. And so, like you said, we think that, oh, that's what you want also. So when you are in a good space, that's really the time to talk about it. That's really time to get to know one another, whether it be a romantic relationship with your partner, whether it be a partnership with a vendor or your clients, whether it be, with a colleague or coworker or a family member. We have relationships in every aspect of our lives. So, getting to know somebody on that level is really, really important. And also to understand the space that they need or the connection that they need when they're in a bad space. So, for instance, I'll have a client and I know if there's something going on with them, I can see it. So some of the emotional intelligence that we can create, as human beings, is seeing what's going on for other people. Maybe it's a little facial gesture. Maybe it's the way their posture is. If they're slouching down, we can kind of tell that there's something that's off with somebody. So if I can tell that somebody's having a challenge or problem, I want to know, do you need space or do you need to talk about it? And just sometimes those questions alone will help somebody get through that next step. Because there's sometimes, Richard, where, we, again, going back to that smile on your face because you're in public, if you're dealing with a client or you're, in a public space, sometimes talking about your challenges and issues will just break you down. And you don't want to cry or you don't want to let out that anger or sadness in that moment. But maybe you need to take that offline. Maybe you need to go into a personal space and have that conversation. Or you need to, to kind of sideline it until you get through a meeting. Maybe you have a client meeting. You have to know when to also address these triggers, because there's so many times where I've seen people go, I see there's something wrong with you. Let me help you, because we're givers, right? And, you don't have to be in healthcare to be a giver. So many parents are givers. When you're in the military, you're giving to so many other people before we give to ourselves. And I'll address that in a minute. But we have to get through our professional part of it before we can really, dive deep into what's happening for ourselves. And so I mean, I think that's a big way to address it.
Well, now, as you see, as we're talking, I'm writing these things down because, things I really want to hit on. And something that, because I'm in my town, I'm in charge of, it used to be called the DARE program, but
Mhm.
now it's in the Health Alliance that, a lot of kids, up to 5,000 children a day are attempting suicide every day in the United States, is because everybody is on a highlight reel. Everybody's using filters. So nobody's just being real. It's kind of like we were talking before we came on the show that I had my friend Paul Hutchinson on the show, and we were talking about, sex trafficking. And yeah, I broke down and cried about 3 times. But you know what? I realized it's okay to be vulnerable. It's okay to show emotion. I'm the same guy that if I get in a fight with somebody, I'm not going to beat you. I'm going to attempt to kill you. But I'm also the same guy that's going to hold my 11-year-old daughter, tell her I love you. You're my heart. And I'm also the same guy that's going to cry on camera if something really gets me emotional. I'm not afraid of it. But I think in the land of filters, a lot of people don't know how to be unfiltered and be vulnerable. We'll talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, and absolutely, and I have a filter that I can walk everybody through that has helped me and helped a lot of my clients. But touching on what Paul Hutchinson, he's a great example of what we do in the sense that Paul created $1 billion business and he sold it, and then he found this thing that pulled at his heartstrings and to help these children that are trafficked. And I was fortunate to spend some time with Paul in Mexico before the movie came out. And amazing guy, by the way, him and his wife both. And he utilizes his emotional wealth to help these kids and to help shine light on this challenge and this issue. And that's what I'm talking about of you know having that emotional intelligence and emotional wealth. And I love his mission in that. But the filters that you're talking about, absolutely, we put our kind of our best face forward, our best foot forward. And back in the day when we did have Dare, I remember Dare also. It was kind of simple. You did drugs or you didn't do it. There's and the bullying the bullying looked different than it is now. I mean, every minute of the day, we get bombarded with being able to have a certain filter, whether it's a different background on camera, or if it's I think one of the things that we have differently in the world today is you can dress on top and then wear your pajama bottoms, and so you're not getting the full picture of what somebody's about. You just get to see what they want to show you. And the more we have these real conversations like we are right now, Richard, the more we're able to kind of dive deeper into the challenges that we all face right now. And again, we focus so much on what makes us different and separate instead of focusing on our connectivity and what makes us, together as humans. And I think that's an important thing to really address also, because when we live in the world of we should haves, we're living in that past. And then when we live in the world of that anxiousness of what am I going to do? How am I going to get more followers? How am I going to connect to more people? Whatever that is in your business, we have this anxiousness about the future. But when we start to slow down and start to be in the present moment, it can be something as simple as a breath, creating the box breathing. And if it's okay with you, I'll go through this filter that I created. And this filter is a good filter for us. It's those positive filters that's going to really help you with whenever you have a challenge that arises, a problem that you're stressed out about, run yourself through this filter, because filters can be good, but the filters that we see most often are really negative. So if that's okay, I'll do that.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And so this is kind of a really simple exercise, and it's probably going to take me a little bit longer to even discuss it. than to when you start practicing it yourself. But if you're in a place, obviously, if you're driving, listen to this and then, replay this when you're grounded and when you're not driving a vehicle. Because I know most people are probably listening to this in the car. But get into a comfortable position and put both feet on the ground, get nice and grounded. So that physical act of grounding yourself makes a big difference. And if you're able to sit up nice and straight in your chair, and we're going to do what's called box breathing. As you probably know, Navy SEALs use this, help with control. And it's just as simple as taking a deep breath in and holding it to 4, holding it for 4, and exhaling for 4. So let's go ahead and do that right now. Take a deep breath in and hold it and let it out slowly to a count of 4. And when we get conscious about our breath and make the audible sound of that breathing in and consciously hold it, because we are in control of that hold, and then let it out slow, we have the ability to get into that present moment. And when you start doing that a few more times, it allows your body to start lowering your heartbeat, lowering your breath, focusing on the present and what's happening right now. And so the filter is called the I Care. And because so many people struggle in silence, struggle with stress, and struggle with the things that are out of their control, this is a way to put yourself back into control. So I Care is an acronym for go inside of yourself. That's the I. So if you have a piece of paper, write this down. I, go inside of yourself. Because as Wayne Dyer said, everything you need to know you already have. So look inside of yourself. Because so many times we look for outside influences and where's the answer? And we look things up on the internet and we ask 5 different people. You know what you need and what you want. It's down deep inside of you. So look for that and get grounded in that space. And then see whatever the problem is, whatever, the challenge that you're having. Maybe it's, you don't have enough time to get all the holiday gifts, but you really want to make it special for everybody. Well, if that's a challenge for you, then contain that problem. What's that problem really about? You want to make it special and connect to somebody else. So the C is contain the problem. Find out what the problem really is. And if it is a problem, and if that is the problem, then shut everything else out around you. You don't need everybody else contributing to the challenge or problem. And it's not a compound problem. It's one problem. And then A, have an awareness of what's going on. You mentioned yourself, what you use is HALT. If you're hungry, if you're angry, if you're, in resentment, whatever that is for you, what are those triggers that are triggering you? So have that awareness of what that's really about, because sometimes it's as simple as, sipping on a glass of water to get grounded. Maybe it's as simple as doing a breathing technique. Maybe just the awareness is that you need a little bit more sleep. Have that awareness of yourself. Because here's the thing, Richard, is that many times we give so much to others, we forget to give to ourselves. And if we don't have a full cup, how are we going to pour into other people? And we do that as caregivers. We do that as you being a parent of 3 kids. You do that as a business owner and as a vet. You've given to your country. You've given to so many other people. You have to take time for yourself. And that's where that awareness comes in. What does my body need? What does my being need? So A is that awareness. And then R is what's important to you. So realign your priorities, realign your needs. So if you need to rest instead of going out to that holiday party, if you need to fill up your cup by having maybe a nutritious meal, a little bit more water, a little bit, like I said, more rest, honor yourself, honor your body, honor that that's what you need and prioritize that. Maybe you made a commitment to your spouse or your kids and saying, hey, I'll go to that, Christmas play, or, I'll go to your baseball game, whatever that is. Prioritize the needs that you have. And maybe you go to that baseball game, but then instead of coming home and doing some work, you rest. So realign those priorities for you. And it's not selfish. It's what's going to fill you up so that you can help everyone else. And then E for I care is energize your decision. And what I mean by that is if you think about a balloon, a full balloon, so it's got air in it, it's tied up, and you're holding onto this balloon and it's a full entity. But if you have one little pinprick in it, that little hole, it deflates that entire balloon, doesn't it?
Mhm.
Yeah. And that little pinprick represents doubt. So if you're making your decision and you're, behind your decision and then you go, well, but negates everything. And so if you have that little bit of doubt, that 1% doubt creates 100% uncertainty in your decisions, in your confidence, in you making the decision to do something good for yourself in that situation, addressing that problem. And I love the energized part of it because again, you've made the decision, you're in control. And just like we talked about a minute ago, you're not going to live in that shoulda, woulda, couldas. You're not going to live in that anxious future. You're making the decision in that present moment. And even if you go, yep, exactly. Today I decide that's absolutely right. You have that power and you have that control. I love that. I love that's how we connect so well, Richard. and and putting together that I care filter. Talk about filters. Let's flip the script on those negative filters. Let's create this positive filter for ourselves. And once you go through this a few more times, teach it to somebody you care about, teach it to somebody you love, because then they'll have power and they'll have confidence too. So it took me longer to explain it than to actually run through it, because once you run through it, I sometimes run through this filter in 30 seconds. And so if I have a challenge or problem, a stress that's coming up, I run through that filter and then I can make a decision just like that.
And as we're talking, I have this cup here. Like it's my cup, but that's not the reason why I keep it on my desk. It's never had anything in it, but I keep it on my desk to remind myself if my cup is empty, I can't pour into anybody else.
Absolutely.
So I got to make sure that I fill my cup, and then I'm able to pour into others. Just like when we get on the plane, and the first thing they tell you that if your oxygen mask drops, you got to put it on yourself first, and then you can help somebody. And as a caregiver, if anybody out there is a caregiver, we're always usually taking care of everybody else, and then we fail, and then because we fail, they fail. So if you
Absolutely.
take care of yourself first, then you're able to take care of everybody else around you. And then the other thing I wanted to say is somebody asked me today, well, what should I do for 2024? I said, learn to say no more. Learn to say no. Like for me, my priorities are God, family, friends, and business. If it's not in that or any of that box, I'm going to say no 99% of the time because I don't have the bandwidth to be able to do everything else. And I think because military, obviously, I love acronyms, and they were always talking about the war and all that stuff. Well, now we have so much distractions that if you're just saying yes to everything, you're you're not gonna hit your goals, or you're not gonna be healthy. If your friends want to go out eating bonbons, and you have a choice to go between eating bonbons and eating salads, if you make the wrong choice enough times, you're gonna get sick.
Mhm.
And like my T-shirt says, today we decide whether we want to be victims or victors. So, guys, if you want to know what's the hack for 2024, start saying no a lot. So, I'll talk about that a little bit.
Absolutely. And no is a complete sentence. It's absolutely true, Richard. And because so many times we don't have those boundaries to say no and when to say no, it is very detrimental to our health and to our emotional states. And we talk a lot about emotional wealth. And so many times we're chasing as business owners or just our society in general, we're chasing the financial wealth and we're not we're not focusing on that emotional wealth. And like I was saying before, example of Paul is, what his crusade and what he's doing now is filling up his emotional wealth. And you had Sharon Lecter on here recently, and she's amazing, and I fortunately got to share the stage with her last year, and she is true to what she says, in the sense of, she wants to help so many people with financial literacy. And so when we focus on that finances, that's great, but we also have to think about the bigger picture and how are we going to balance our lives. You talked about you can't have this without that earlier. So kind of that yin yang, if you're talking about an Eastern modality, you're talking about yeses and nos. So we have, one side of the scale and the other side of the scale, and we're trying to balance things out. And somebody told me one time, balance doesn't exist. And it crushed my world, because I sought out balance for the longest time. And so I believed that person that there was no balance. But here's the thing. Even if you have balance for a moment, just a moment, it feels amazing. And then you just kind of go, okay, well, I'm going to work on my health over here. And then I also have to work on my relationships. And we start balancing the things out in your life. Like, so what you're talking about, putting God first. So when you fill up your cup of serving God, and then your family, and then, whatever your realignment is, whatever is important to you, fill up those cups, go through that filter. And then it creates more of a balance for you, because I see people consistently, they're, January, they go, okay, I'm going on a health kick, and they go hard, and they go, they get into the gym. And by January 14th, that's the time period, 2 weeks, not even a whole month, people drop off because it's not inspirational to them. They're motivated by some outside factor. And usually the outside factor is societal. It's usually, I need to look good. I need to drop weight. My doctor says that my heart needs to get better, whatever that is. But they're not inspired to go, hey, from the inside is, I want to feel better so I can spend a longer time with my kids. I want to see them grow up. Or something from the inside. I talk a lot about the stress cycle in my book. And the stress cycle essentially is the stressors from the inside, meaning, what kind of pressure do you put on yourself? What negative talk do you say to yourself? Or what pressures do you take in from the outside? What do other people say to you that you let into your world? Those boundaries of saying no. What other pressures from society do you let into your world? And it kind of bounces back and forth, like a pinball game. It goes bing, 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 bing. And that stress bounces around back and forth. And until we break that cycle, it's going to continue to reoccur over and over and over, right? Just like the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and getting the same result. Yeah. Yeah. So once we break that cycle and break that down and start to have that understanding, and in this case, you're talking about saying no, that boundary is solid. Make that if that's what you want to focus in on that for the next year. So for you guys that are listening, whatever boundary you want to create, go through the I care filter, create something for yourself to focus in on. And, I'm doing this training that I'm going to give away for your audience here, Richard. And it's creating just little habits. And I go into not only to have an amazing morning, but an amazing way to have little tiny habits throughout your entire day. There's 16 quick little exercises to just check in with letting go of your stress and creating positive habits. And I'm happy to give that to your audience at the end from free gift from Sara.com. But, I think that's a really great way.
One thing that I really love about your book, I did pick up your book. It was the day that I knew that we were going to talk. I picked up your book. I've been studying it. I've been stalking you. Following you on social media.
Oh, that's you. Okay.
Yeah. So if your numbers have gone up, yeah, it's me. But because I got friends, my friend John McCaskill and Will Schneider, they're on One's a Navy SEAL commander, retired, and Will Schneider. They taught me how, because I had them on the show and we were talking about mindfulness. And then we were also talking about meditation. I'm like, I don't have 20 minutes to be sitting going, and they're like, bro, take 5 minutes. And in your case, take 2 minutes. Just, and so in the mornings when I get up, I go into the living room and for 2 minutes, I'm just quiet. And I'm just thinking about my day and I'm being grateful. And I'm like, Lord, I don't know what you got planned for me today, but I can't wait. I'm excited. I'm blessed. So even for that 2 minutes, my day starts off right. And then for men, because I know a lot of men my age, they get up in the middle of the night, go to the bathroom. When you get back in bed, spend 2 minutes just being grateful, saying, Lord, thank you. Thank you for my beautiful wife. Thank you for my kids. Just have an attitude of gratitude. And it's amazing, like James Clear wrote in his amazing book, Atomic Habits. It's amazing if you wake up with gratitude and you go to bed with gratitude, your whole day is a lot different. And you don't have to sit and meditate for an hour and a half and sing Kumbaya. It might only take you 2 minutes to get into that mindset. So talk about your 2 minutes and what you teach.
Absolutely. And thank you for being that stalker. I appreciate that. but really, and part of the reason why I created the 2-minute techniques is because we're friggin' busy. We're so busy in life. We're doing so much. And, at one point I would take my clients off the table and walk them back to the waiting room. And I had 2 minutes to tell them the next step in their self-care. Because if you don't have a next step, you're just going to, let all of the self-care just flow away. So if there's something that you can put into your life right now and it takes 2 minutes, great. Something as simple as, here's the thing. I'm left-handed. I'm an artistic person. And so I like to see everything out. And so it drives my spouse crazy. So I have this thing where I do a 2-minute tidy up. In the morning, I take 2 minutes and I straighten up my office. I take 2 minutes, straighten up the kitchen. If you just take 2 minutes to do something for not only yourself, but for the other person that you're with, whether it be, in your office or, at home, maybe it's, with your kids, teach your kids this. Hey kids, 2 minutes after you brush your teeth, go spend 2 minutes to tidy up the room. Tidy up the living room. Maybe you didn't make the mess, but, maybe your sibling did. And when we work together and doing something as simple as that creates great habits, right? So that's a simple 2-minute technique that's very universal. But when we do other things like realizing that what we say to ourselves, like I said, that over and over, whatever we say to ourselves reflects back. So if you tell yourself, man, I suck at this, you're going to suck at it, aren't you? Yeah. But if we flip the script and we go, I'm working on being great at whatever that is, fill in the blank for you. And that's just a 2-minute exercise to take inventory. You know what? I tell myself that I'm not good at reading. Well, what's the positive? I am great at reading. I'm working on being great at reading. And then you pick up a book for a few minutes and you start reading a book. You start creating that positive momentum and you're flipping that.
And vertical momentum.
Exactly. Just boom. I love your tie-ins. I love it. But
something, I was reading a book because I'm a big reader. And it was a book, I think it was called From Homeless to Billionaire. And this gentleman said that every day he says 5 things to himself, 20, 30, 40 times a day. For me, it's I'm happy, I'm healthy, I'm wealthy, I'm whole, I'm disease-free, I'm helping millions of people, and it's all because of my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. So that doesn't even take me 20 seconds. But if I keep saying that to myself over and over again, it gets into your soul. And I think whatever you say to or about yourself, you would never say to anybody else. You would never just say, "Hey, stupid," to somebody else, but you'll say it to yourself all day long. And then you're like, a friend of mine said, I think it was Ed Milet actually. He said that your mind will lie to you. So the things that you say to yourself, you're actually going to start believing. So whether it's
Mhm.
positive or negative, your reticular activating system is going to believe it and find it.
Mhm.
Right? That's what you're talking
Exactly.
about.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. You got it. And by the way, congratulations on how successful your podcast has been. And I know that you hit, the top next to Ed Milet, and that's awesome. So congratulations about that. You put in the work, and so what you're doing is resonating with so many people, and helping people, get through whatever you guys are dealing with. And continue to listen to the Comeback Coach, because having something positive, and not always positive, real, is really important, because we don't always have positivity in our lives. We go through those ups and downs, and we feel like we're struggling by ourselves, and we're struggling in silence. And just know that you're not alone. Create the support around you. And going back to filling up your own cup, as much as we like, as a massage therapist, or as an emotional wealth coach, when if I'm not filled up, I can't work. I can't help others. And when I know you deal with addiction, and so you never know when stress is going to strike, and you can have that bad day just in an instant. But you have to have that support to be able to go, who's my people, and set that
Yeah.
up ahead of time in a good space. Because if you can't call John, then you call Sally, and if you can't call Sally, then you got to call 5 people deep, and have that bench ready to go. Because sometimes people are dealing with their own stuff, and this is, especially around the holidays, this is the time where people you know reflect on some negative things. you know um my grandmother passed on December 23rd. It's been years, but December 23rd for me is a trigger.
Yeah.
And December 7th, which was Pearl Harbor Day, was such a tragic event for my family. My great grandfather died in that, during the bombing of Pearl Harbor. But here's the thing: my book came out on December 7th last year, and I created the opposite. I created a positive trigger. So when December 7th comes around, I'm like, okay, in our history, there's this devastation that happened, and it sent our country into war. But here's the thing: now in my world, I get to go. I now get to share my stressed out book and help people deal with their stress. And so when you find what works for you, when you find, that one positive thing, run with it. It could be as simple as, I set out a bird feeder for the hummingbirds in my life. Absolutely. You get to decide. I set out this for the hummingbirds, and that one little thing, I get to, help those birds, have a place to be safe and eat. That's simple, Richard. That's so simple. And it brings me joy. And if you don't have joy in your life, then, the other things in life may not matter as much. Like you said, you've got your hierarchy in place, and you're solid. You know when to say, this is important to me.
Well, like when I had Mr. David Meltzer on, if you've ever seen the movie Jerry Maguire, they actually wrote the movie about him and Lee Steinberg. Well, he told me that gratitude and anger cannot occupy the same spot at the same
Mhm.
time. So we got to pick which one. And I choose gratitude over anger all the time. I mean, it doesn't work that way all the time, but I know that I tell my clients, if you're having a bad day, just take out a piece of paper and write 5 things you're grateful for. And then you'll realize, you know what? I'm struggling with this. Like I got mad last week, I think. It was raining out, it was cold, and I had to take the garbage out, and I kicked the garbage can, and I'm getting wet. And then I took the garbage out, and then I said, wait a minute. 3 miles from here, I was living in a crack house, eating out of garbage cans. And now I live in a $500,000 home with a beautiful bride and 3 beautiful children. What the hell am I complaining about? And that's what I decided. All right, I'm going to turn my have tos into get tos.
Mhm.
So today that I decided to change my mindset, that, and I think if people start thinking, man, I got a lot to be grateful for. Some people have nothing. Some people are homeless. Some people that had plans for today didn't wake up. So we have a lot to be grateful for, but sometimes it takes a pen and a paper to write down some things that we're grateful for. So talk about
Yeah.
gratitude a little.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with that. And, again, going back to creating good habits is before I even open my eyes in the morning, I oftentimes wake up before my alarm and I go, I'm happy. And I tell myself that, and just like you just said, I'm happy. That's what I do too. And I go, okay, I'm happy. And then, I put 2 feet on the ground and I stand up and I reach for the sky and I go, hello, sky, because I can move my arms, I can move my back, and I can touch my toes. So I touch my toes, touch the ground, and do a little yoga pose and just touch the sky again and go, hello. And I do that 3 times. That's the second thing that I do when I get out of bed. The third thing that I do when I get out of bed is then I drink a glass of water. So I always have a glass of water handy, and that hydration goes a long way because it helps your digestive system, helps your metabolism. It helps so many systems in your body. And those are just the first 3 things that I do to create gratitude and have that awareness that I'm able to do those things. I'm able to see and hear and feel, because not everybody has that luxury. And if you're deprived of one of those senses, then what other sense do you have that you can heighten and be thankful for and have a gratitude for? And so that's part of creating great habits is just those simple things, and that takes me less than a minute to do those 3 things. And so when we start creating those things in repetition, instead of going, oh, my alarm went off, this day's going to suck. I used to say that to myself. And Richard, I had those sucky days. There's days I couldn't get out of bed. And bringing this back to where we started in this conversation was, as I was finding out more about myself and figuring out what was working and who I truly was in life, I had those days of not being able to get out of bed, and I would cry myself to sleep. I would, drink too much, or whatever the case was. I was doing things to harm myself. I was doing things that were just not productive at all. And at one point in my life, I had a shoulder injury and I couldn't work. And I was at a crossroads in my life before I left my relationship, and a friend of mine, I didn't speak for 2 days. I haven't told this story in public, but I didn't speak for 2 days. And a friend of mine said, let's get in the car and let's go to the beach. And we drove out to the beach, and it was in the middle of winter, and I wanted to walk in the ocean and not come out. And I've told a version of the story, but not like this. And I went back to the gratitude that I had for spending time with my aunt and my uncle over the summers. And my uncle, served in the Navy, and now he has a lot of debilitating challenges in his life. But I remember back when we were kids, or when I was a kid, and I looked up to my uncle. He was a drummer, and he did martial arts, and there was so much connectiveness that I had to my aunt and uncle. And I know, you have a special aunt and uncle that helped you out through your life as well. Which happened to be named Sarah, right? Your aunt.
Yep.
But I reflected on that moment, and my uncle used to own a video store back in the day, when the VHS tapes were out. But I remember as a kid, I just got to pick out whatever movie I wanted to watch, and we were watching a movie, and I don't even remember what it was, but the main character killed himself. And my aunt said, killing yourself is the most selfish thing you can do. And I kind of leaned in and I wondered why. And she said, because, the aftermath of what your parents are going to go through or your loved ones are going to go through, it's selfish. And I remembered that, and I stopped myself. And I've since told her that story after my book came out. But, you don't know what people are going through, and you're not living in their shoes. So when you can give other people grace because they cut you off on the freeway, maybe they're worse off than you. But if you give them that little bit of space, maybe they need it, but give yourself the grace, because like you said, you don't want to call someone else stupid, but we do sometimes. We call ourselves stupid. But, if we can give that grace to ourselves and go, you know what, have the gratitude of whatever smallness we have. Maybe it's feeding birds, or maybe it's helping people with their stress levels. Having just, again, going back to gratitude of how can I be better today? It's just a
Yeah,
powerful thing.
and for me, I'm a realist, and I realize that the average American male lives 78 years old, 70 till they're 78. I'll be 55, so I got 23 years left on this earth. Hopefully, I get more, but I want to leave a legacy. I want to leave this world better than when I first got here. So for me, it's not even about the money. I mean, sure, success will come if you're doing the right things. And like Zig Ziglar said, if you help enough people get what they want, you'll get what you want. But I think if we start thinking more about how can I help this world, and how can I leave a legacy for my family, like your uncle left that legacy for you, I think things will start changing in this stressed out world. And I tell my wife, no matter what happens, you know, somebody, a child was born today and somebody died today. So
Hmm.
the shit that we're going through, it's really not that important 5 years from now. And I tell everybody, if it's not going to bother you 5 years from now, don't even give it 5 minutes today. You know what I mean? Because it's not going to friggin' matter. If you're worried about who's going to be president, if you're going to worry about stocks and all this, it really doesn't matter in the grand scheme of things. And I'm a big thinker. I'm not just a minute by minute thinker. So, I just want to say, guys, if you're stressed out, if it's not going to bother you in 5 years, don't let it take 5 minutes of your peace today. So.
Yeah. And peace is an important thing. And sometimes, when you're able to think on that grander scale, that's a great thing to be able to do. And unfortunately, so many people get caught up in the minutia and the small things, and it hinders their success. And and that's an unfortunate thing, because I know from experience, I've done that too. And when you get caught up in that and you're not able to get past a simple decision, or a decision that you've made, or regret that you have, we keep living in it. And again, what we talked about earlier, we keep living it over and over. So we need to get to the root of what that challenge is, and it's usually tied to an emotional event, and let that go. And sometimes it's as simple as just saying let it go, but you have to give yourself that permission. But sometimes it's deeper, and sometimes we're not ready to let it go. So we help people to unmask that and dislodge it so they can get it out of their system.
Well, like you were talking about with your uncle in the video store. Yeah, I'm that old, guys. I had VCR. I still got VCR tape. But, something that I was told, that sometimes you just got to take that VCR tape out, walk out, chuck it in the garbage, and let it go. But sometimes, like my mentor, Mr. Ed Milet, said, I can either have post-traumatic stress disorder, or I can have post-traumatic growth. He said, you can think of, all these things have happened to me. Well, what about if you flip the script and say, you know what? All these things happened for me. Everything is a teachable moment. Now I can turn my mess into my message. So
Mhm.
instead of all that negative stuff, having all the negative stuff, now you can flip it into a positive. So yeah, I was abused, but now it was only for me to help other people that are being abused. So a lot of times, sometimes you have to flip the script, or just take out the tape and put another tape in.
I love that analogy. Yeah, and hit that eject button. There you go, and chuck it. My spouse says, your biggest shakening will be your biggest awakening, and you can either stay in that shakening place and in fear, or you can be, in that awakening place and do something about it. And sometimes that awakening creates the greatest thing you ever do in your life. And so find whatever that is, take that fear, take that sorrow, take that anger, and, create an awakening for yourself of, creating that legacy, like you said. And that's tremendous, because we've all gone through a lot of junk, a lot of crap. And, some people stay in it. And when you're ready to let it go, yeah, let's create that awakening and create that legacy.
I love it. Turn your mess into your success. I absolutely love that. So you
Mhm.
said you're going to do a giveaway. How can we find you? How can we support your mission? How could we pick up your books so we can actually start implementing this stuff into our life?
So thank you for that. And you can find my Stressed Out and Don't Know What to Do book on Amazon or Barnes and Noble. How to get in touch with me directly is, let me give you this free gift. And again, it's this training that I've put together, 16 simple ways to really implement a successful day quick and easily. You can get it at free gift from Sara, Sara.com, free gift from Sara.com. And I'm working on it right now. I'm going to put it out there. And by the time you guys click on that, you'll get that training for free. I used to just give it away to my paid clients, but you know what? So many people need assistance in this world right now, and especially this time of year. So I just want to give it to you.
I wrote that down, so I'm going to put that in the show notes. I'm so grateful that we finally got the chance to hang out, and I just want to say thank you. And guys, the reason why I wear this T-shirt every day, yeah, I got like 5 of them, but the reason I wear it because something that Joel Osteen said: we can either be victims or we can be victors. We get to decide every day. And if you're listening to this show for any amount of time, you guys are victors. You're no longer playing the victim game. And that's why every year I have a Today I Decide Mental Health Summit just to talk about that one thing. So guys, if you're struggling today, make sure you reach out to this young lady. Her website is fire. She's so easy to get in touch with on Facebook, LinkedIn, blah, blah, blah. She's everywhere. So all you got to do is Google her name. You'll find her. So guys, make sure you do that. And also, if I just launched a brand new course, if you wanted to learn how to start a profitable, purposeful, and powerful podcast, just started a brand new course, and we're going to teach you how to start a podcast and get up to 1 million downloads and to get amazing guests like this to come on your show. And I'm actually teaching it, and you're actually going to get me for 8 weeks, which is scary. I'm sure my wife is like, yeah, keep them. But so, guys, if you're interested in learning how to become a professional podcaster, just write podcast down below. I'm so grateful for you, and I'm so humbled, and just to be able to call you friend. Thank you so much.
Oh, Richard, I really appreciate it. The comeback coach and everybody that's out there, you know, take in this message and do something great because you have it within you to do it. So thank you for having me.
I love it, and it's definitely my honor and my privilege. And I've taken so many notes. I can't. Every time I have somebody on my show, I put this stuff into work in my life. So I got like a bunch of notes that I can't wait to start using. So I just wanted to say thank you, and I'm so grateful. So, guys,
Oh, absolutely.
have a Merry Christmas, guys. Happy Thanksgiving, Merry Christmas, and guys, remember, vertical momentum is the only way to go is but up. And I love you guys. Thank you so much, and I can't wait to see what you got coming up next because I know you're going to drop something new. God bless you and have a great week.